Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Film Recommendations. In this one, we're going to be talking about The Poker House. Now, this one has a little bit of significance for me because it is a semi-autobiographical story written and directed by the person it's about. So it is a very personal movie for actress and director Lori Petty, who a lot of people will know from Point Break and Tank Girl, and of course the pivotal A League of Their Own, where she played the younger sister of the two, opposite Gina Davis and several other phenomenal actors, including Tom Hanks. All right, so what is this movie about? Well, it's a slice-of-life drama that takes place over the course of one day, and obviously it takes various events and consolidates them down to one day, but it is set in urban Iowa, which is not enough location, but it's the basis for the actual story, and hence it actually is important to set it where it was actually taking place. Anyway, in the story, young Agnes, played by Jennifer Lawrence in probably her earliest on-screen role that I can recall, has to basically be the responsible one, being the eldest daughter of a young woman played by Selma Blair, who escaped from an abusive household to go and live as a prostitute at the mercy of a pimp. And it's really an amazingly gritty drama in this light. So given that as the context for this story, there's a lot of foul language, there's a lot of very emotionally charged content. Now, this film was released in 2010, but was produced in 2007. That's an important distinction because you'll actually see actors who are much younger than the first time you'll have seen them. Like, for example, one of the youngest actors in the film is Chloe Grace Moretz, who a lot of people, of course, know from the two Kick-Ass films, among several others. And she plays the youngest sister. There is also a middle child. And anyway, the story follows all three sisters as they're going through their day in this, as mentioned, slice-of-life drama. An interesting thing to note is that Chloe Grace Moretz actually has to play opposite David Alan Grier, who co-wrote the script for this particular movie. And he plays just a bar patron opposite this young budding star actress. And it's really amazing to see. He does it somewhat comedically, but it's one of the higher energy scenes, and clearly there was a fair amount of direction given to the actors in terms of how they should play it. Jennifer Lawrence, of course, plays the role quite excellently. She's very young in this, and she plays opposite a number of different players. And it's really fascinating to see just all of these different performers in this role. Now, one of the other characters and actors to pay attention to is, of course, Bokeem Woodbine, who you don't cast in a small role. He's a significant actor in his own right, just with all of the different roles he's played. But he actually plays the mother's pimp. So it's important to understand every aspect of the different characters and how they play. The reason why the film is called The Poker House is because the house that young Agnes and her sisters and mother all live in is the house that this pimp uses to play poker in. And that's where, they get put up. But it's really a rundown, shabby little hovel with out-of-date fixtures and no food to speak of. Agnes works multiple jobs in order to make things work. Has the middle child deliver papers, gets the money for that. She works over at a burger place on and off days after school in order to help get a little bit of money there. And outside of all that, she goes to school, gets good grades, goes and plays basketball. So she's really pulling things together as much as possible and walking a tightrope. And she has to be there for her younger sisters, otherwise they'll just fall to pieces and have nobody there for them, because the mother is a cokehead, is an alcoholic, and of course is selling herself out, and doesn't hold any aspirations for her daughters in any way. The one consolation that Agnes has is the rhythm and blues music, the jazz, the soul music that is kept in the house. And that's the only thing she has to turn to for her moment's peace. She wakes up early to do all this, eats what she can get, and, is just as much objectified by the pimp as the mother is. Well, the slice of life drama sees each of the different young women going about their day, going through their lives, figuring things out, and trying to do their best. Well, it's not a great life. And it's not meant to be a great life. It's meant to show this very desperate situation. Now, a lot of people might consider this a chick flick in that regard. And I would disagree. I would think that this would be more of a film that challenges your perceptions. It challenges your perceptions that everything's going to work out perfect or everything's going to work out fine. It tells you what eventually happened to Agnes and what happened to just her alone. It doesn't tell you what happened to the other people in her life. But it does have a turning point where everything crosses a line, and from there, there's no going back. And that is when the pimp decides to rape young Agnes. She's only 14 years old. And I don't know if this is the exact detail of what happened to Lori Petty, but it's important to understand this. It's important to understand this for the story. It could have happened any time. It could have happened 100 times, but the important thing for the story and the narrative is what happens in the drama. So there is that trigger warning ahead. If you watch this movie, there is a somewhat graphic rape scene and a graphic scene immediately following where Jennifer Lawrence has to recover from this. Now, there is a little bit of narrative, but not very much. But the turning point comes immediately after, where Agnes has been holding on to and occasionally touching the pimp's gun. And it's literally a Chekhov's gun kind of device. It is shown, there is a point made of it. And Agnes picks up the gun and points it early in the film in the direction of the pimp, whose name is Duvall, for reference sake. Now, she points it directly at the door where the pimp is beating her mother. And then she quickly puts it down. Now, during a poker game, Duvall takes out the gun and puts it on the table after one of the other players suggests that maybe he cheated in order to get 3 kings and win the game. Well, it's left there on the table, and that's an important detail, and then she picks it up after leaving the bathroom to try and wash away the blood mixed with the semen that from the rape. She picks up the gun and points it at him and shoots it a couple times, and he says, you aren't going to have any kind of a life. You don't want to spend time behind bars. And she just flatly says, do you think the cops would even care if I killed you? And honestly, it's a fair point. And I don't know what happens. They leave it very open, but they make it clear that she leaves without killing the pimp and goes to her basketball game after, cleaning up, taking a car and going. Well, Anyway, the point is, it's a pretty epic, emotionally charged scene. It's a clear turning point for the character where she knows that she has to draw the line, and she can't go on living this way. She now has charged herself with the task of at least getting herself out of there. She goes and, after winning the game, collects her sisters, and they listen to a song together, classic Marvin Gaye, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, on an 8-track, and they even make a point of having the 8-track tape stop right in the middle as it changes over, as 8 tracks did, and stop right in the middle of the song so that they could, and she pulls over the car just to stop for that pause so that they wait while the tape changes over and then resumes. And if you want, you could almost see that changeover in the 8-track tape as a metaphor for that part of her life, if you want to. It's not an easy part. It's not that everything is going smoothly. It's just that cha-chunk, that noise. You aren't quite sure what's going to happen. Maybe the tape will scramble up. Maybe it'll gobble up the tape. Maybe everything will go wrong. But as it is, Agnes is taking the money and she's going to treat her sisters to a dinner at Howard Johnson's. Which, basic diner food, good food, something substantive that they can live on. Good for once in a while. Anyway, so with all that, you go through this entire day not knowing what's going to happen. There is no 3-act story. There is no clear journey for each character. There's just what happened. And it's a challenge to the audience in the narrative to follow and hang in there. And in that aspect, you are very much in the same position that the characters are in. Everyone who is facing these challenges is challenging themselves to hang in there and endure through whatever trials they face, whatever surprises life has to throw at you. And in that way, I think that this is a very necessary film to watch. I think it's a very important film, whether you're going through similar things or not, whether you went through similar things or not. As I was watching it, I felt just the life being drained from me, like the world was just suffering, and like it was hard to get through it all. But in honesty, in all honesty, I feel like that was the lesson of the story, that there are going to be times of despair, and I've had plenty of those times myself. So in that light, I would say absolutely do check this movie out. I would say to not watch it with anyone who is super young, teenagers at best, and like I said, there is that warning that there is the graphic rape scene. There are scenes of underage drinking, underage smoking, all that kind of stuff. So you want to be careful and have that heads up. There are sweet moments, there are kind moments, there are suggestions that maybe things will get a little bit better. And if you wanted to compare this to other movies with Jennifer Lawrence that were released, there was Winter's Bone, and I watched that movie not long after it came out, and I wouldn't recommend it to a single soul, because I found it just depressing and sad, and I sat there with someone who said that they knew people like that, and they knew the part of the world that this story took place, and that nothing worked out, and nothing was better, and there were no happy days behind or happy days ahead, and it wasn't going to be any better. I found that Winter's Bone was an absolute drudge to get through, and I think at the time when I saw it, I gave it a low score as a result. This one, though, I think because it's such a personal story, deserves a little bit more recognition. And the actors playing in it played to their strengths. This is where you see Jennifer Lawrence in the role that really got her the attention, that got the awards. Yes, Winter's Bone got the awards, but you would not have heard as much about Winter's Bone, I think, if you hadn't first latched on to her in this. And then you saw her in other films like The Hunger Games and some of the other stuff. But I think this was the breakthrough role that got her a lot of later work. And I think Chloe Grace Moretz got a lot of attention because they were seeing some of the buzz around the Poker House in the independent film circuit and hearing some of the praise for her performance. And all of the actors really do pull through fantastic performances, and that you have to attribute not just to the actors, but to their director, Lori Petty, in this case. She was obviously able to get the work out of the performers that she needed for the parts, for the scenes. And she obviously knew how to work with them. So I think there is something to be said for that. I think there is a lot to be said for the various production crew. You don't have a large main cast, but you do have a fairly sizable supporting cast for a lot of the scenes. You also have an excellent amount of work in terms of taking you out of where you are presently into this period in the 1970s. This film is set in 1976, and you feel like this is in 1976. You don't feel like these are actors playing the part in 2007, almost 30 years later. You feel like this is in the time and place that it is set, and no earlier, no later. You are right there in the moment. So that has to go to production, direction, everything. They really do give you this wonderful slice of life drama set as if you were taken right back in time, watching the events as they happen. So that's pretty remarkable when you get down to it. That really deserves a heck of a lot of praise. So, yeah, this movie gets absolute top score, 5 out of 5. Not just because I'm a fan of Lori Petty, but because I think this movie deserves more attention than it got. Because I didn't hear a single word of it until just a few days ago. And I've looked at a lot of films with these actors and everything in it. This is a movie that you're going to go, oh, it's that person. Oh, it's that person. Like I said, Selma Blair, David Alan Grier, Jennifer Lawrence, Chloe Grace Moretz. You're going to recognize a lot of the people in this movie. But beyond that, they also give powerful performances. So it really deserves the score that I'm giving it, I think, based on its own merits. Even if I didn't know anyone who was attached to it, it would have that powerful moment for a lot of the viewers. And I don't think it would deserve the reputation of an independent movie or chick flick where, it doesn't do a lot otherwise. It really does challenge the viewer. It really does push a lot of boundaries in terms of narrative. And in one particular scene, they even did a very interesting bit of cinematography. You'll notice it when you see it, where the camera is moving to the right, and in the next scene, the camera is panning right. So it goes from the edge of one wall to another very intentionally to sort of just say we're moving. And it's a very subtle moment. There's no attention called to it, but that panning over into another scene just moves the audience along very smoothly. Anyway. So with that said, thanks for clicking over and watching this, and giving it a listen. If you want to, I'm on social media, so you can follow me there. I'm also on Patreon, where I post a lot of independent vlogs of this content. Gives you a bit of an idea of who I am as a person, some of the stuff I've gone through just in personal life. And, of course, I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, I'm Claudia Reviews, and on Facebook, I'm just Claudia. So thanks for clicking over again. Take care. Bye-bye.